Today on The Big Story, antibiotics doing more harm than good. SGH changes its antibiotics procedures. Find out why. Athletes facing a host of problems ahead of SEA Games in Manila. And Grab's new cash advance scheme for riders raises eyebrows. Hello and welcome to The Big Story, where we'll discuss the top news of today and explain why it matters. I'm Dylan Ang, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. You've heard the saying of too much of a good thing is bad for you. That's especially true when it comes to antibiotics. When it's not used properly, it'll do more harm than good as your body becomes antibiotic resistant. Recognizing this, Singapore General Hospital has decided to take the lead by stopping the use of a strong antibiotic after only 1 day in patients unlikely to have a bacterial infection. And the results speak for themselves. Each year, more than 100 patients at SGH are able to go home 7.5 days earlier, saving about $11,000 in treatment costs. More importantly, patients are saved from the side effects of the drug, and it reduces the risk of antibiotic resistance. Here with us to tell us more is Senior Health Correspondent Sama Khalik. Hey Sama.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Now Sama, could you tell us currently what is SGH antibiotic practice like?
Okay, SGH is one of our biggest hospitals, right? So they get about 80,000 patients admitted every year. Right now, half of them are given antibiotics on admission. Okay, so that's a lot of patients, but not all of them require antibiotics. The reason they're given it immediately is because it takes 3 days for the cultures to come back to tell the doctor if these people really have a bacterial infection. And the doctors are afraid that if I wait 3 days before I start treatment, it might be too late, so they start immediately. Right.
Now, Sama, just to follow up on that, how significant are these results about this review?
The 24-hour review?
Yeah.
Well, okay, some patients who are given antibiotics are given the very, very strong broad-spectrum antibiotic. And because not all of them need it, it doesn't make sense for them to stay on it. But since it takes 3 days, what do you do, right? So SGH has come up with I suppose you could call it a quick and dirty way of checking whether the patients really need it. So they review after 24 hours. And in some cases where they're very sure that it's unlikely to be a bacterial infection, they'll tell the doctor and the patient can be stopped. And when the patient stops early, you don't suffer all the side effects of a strong antibiotic. If you take too much antibiotics, you could get diarrhea, you could get skin rashes, it could affect your kidneys and your liver.
Yeah, a lot of side effects.
Yeah.
Now, Sama, why is this? So now you mentioned in your article that people commonly misuse antibiotics, and so why is this misuse a problem actually?
Okay, why is a misuse a problem? Bacteria are very smart. They reproduce every 20 minutes, right? You get new bacteria. And then if you use the drugs and you don't kill them off, they learn to resist. And then when you resist, then next time you use the drug on that bacteria, it doesn't work. So what do? You have to look for stronger drugs. So Prof. Kwa from SGH was telling me that currently this broad-spectrum antibiotic they're using is the last line.
Right.
If the bugs are resistant to that, they have to go to a different antibiotic, and that one is more toxic. It damages the body more. So what doctors are afraid of is one day you'll have bad bugs, no drugs.
Right. Now, Sama, just to end off, what more can be done to prevent such misuse? I mean, what does the future look like?
Well, I think everybody around the world knows that there is this problem. So all the hospitals, all the doctors are getting more keenly aware. And I think everybody is doing their little bit to help. And hopefully, that this works. We just keep our fingers crossed.
Right. Thanks, Salma.
Thank you.
Now, thanks, Salma, for coming on the show and for shedding some light on this matter. If you'd like to read the full story, you can always visit our website at straitstimes.com. Now, moving on, trouble in Manila. Singapore's football, netball and floorball teams have been hit with problems in Manila, having arrived ahead of the SEA Games official opening on the 30th of November. For instance, Team Singapore's netball and football teams face problems like a lack of food or cold food, as well as a shortage of halal options at their hotels. Other countries had their athletes stranded at the airport for hours or were driven to the wrong hotel. We are now joined from the Philippines by correspondent Raul Dancel, as well as correspondent Sazali Abdul Aziz in the studio. Hey guys.
Hi Dylan.
Hi.
Now, Sazali, let's start with you. Give us some updates on the situation. How has anything changed?
Yeah, I'm happy to report that things have gotten a lot better. I think the netball team sorted out their issues pretty soon after they first suffered them, and the football team have also sort of solve their halal food issues as well. I think at one of the early dinners, they only had plain rice, pita bread, and brinjal lasagna, effectively 3 carbs options,
right,
which is not ideal for an athlete. But from what I understand, yesterday they enjoyed chicken, fish, and vegetable options as well. So I think it's a lot better. But still, there are some question marks because the Thai football team also complained about shortage of food, and they don't particularly require halal food. So. To be honest, I think it's just the problems mainly stem from a lack of preparedness more than anything else.
Right.
And I think yesterday the organisers held a meeting, a chef de mission meeting with all the participating nations, and I think they have committed to solving these issues, which like I said, probably just a lack of preparedness. That's why it's all happening at the beginning.
Right. Now, Sazali, we'll get back to you in a bit. For now, let's check in on Raul. Raul.
Hi.
Now, Raul, if you can, if I can just get your thoughts on this, Singapore is not the only nation that has spoken out about the reception they face. 3 other nations have actually talked about their reception, the reception they face as well. Now, how is the Philippines actually feeling about this?
Well, as you can imagine, there is outrage, there is disappointment, there is a sense of national embarrassment, there is a demand for accountability. All these things wouldn't have happened had there been a cohesive leadership that could have put together the financial and logistic requirements for an event this big. But what happened was what we had is an ad hoc committee, which is generally a private initiative, which is essentially a coordinating body. It didn't have the resources of a full government agency. So subsequently, its preparations were haphazard, scattered. I guess that's why we're having these problems, no? And this ad hoc committee also butted heads with the Philippine Sports Commission and with the Philippine Olympic Committee, which were supposed to organize, and which probably would have done a better job had this been a 100% government initiative.
Right. Now, Raul, what about on the ground level? Are people actually excited for the games to begin? What is the mood like?
Having said that, or having seen all these problems, the sentiment here is to refocus on the games. People here are saying we should rally behind our athletes. We should bring back the focus on sports, on camaraderie, on excellence, and then we can have the accountability and the mudslinging and the retribution after the closing ceremonies.
Right. Now, Sazali, just to end off, now you're wearing a Team Singapore jacket.
Represent.
Now, Team Singapore's football boys take on Laos tonight.
Yeah.
Do you think this would have impacted their preparations a little?
Honestly, I don't think so. The players and officials that I spoke to, weren't too upset. I mean, they shared the facts of what happened, but they weren't too upset at the whole situation. And at most, I think they regard it as a minor inconvenience. So they know, and athletes are a resilient bunch. They know the only reason they're in the Philippines in the first place is to compete, and I believe they're ready to compete. They've had a long preparation for this tournament, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in action tonight against Laos.
Right, thanks Azali and Raul as well for coming on the show and sharing with us more about the SEA Games in Manila. Now, for more stories and to keep up to date with the SEA Games, visit our website at straitstimes.com. And now let's move on to What's Trending, where Rachel will share with us what's buzzing in the internetverse. Rachel?
Thanks Dylan, it's time for What's Trending. First up, the biggest heist in history. Thieves stole $1.5 billion worth of jewelry from the Green Vault Museum in Germany. The early 18th century jewelry stolen were reported to include gems such as rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. How did they do it? Sounds like a montage sequence right out of a movie. So this is what they did. The thieves set a nearby electricity junction box on fire, which knocked out power supply and shut down the museum's alarm system. Then they dismantle iron bars at the windows before breaking into the showcases and stealing the jewelry pieces. It's believed that the thieves are small in size after all. They had to fit into the tiny gap they made. The museum has pleaded with the thieves not to destroy or melt down the jewelry pieces, which are precious because of their high cultural and historical value. Next, Taylor Swift has taken over Michael Jackson's crown. Beating the king of pop's 24 career triumphs, Taylor now has 29 awards from the American Music Awards. Voted in by fans, Tay-Tay won a total of 6 awards, including Artist of the Year. During her acceptance speech, she said the honour celebrates 10 years of hard work and of art, fun and memories. Congrats, Taylor. Next, not all heroes wear capes or are even human. Conan, a military service dog, was honoured by President Donald Trump at the White House on Monday. The dog was injured during a raid which led to the death of prominent ISIS leader Baghdadi. Conan pursued Baghdadi into a dark tunnel where the ISIS leader blew himself up with a suicide vest, killing himself and 3 children as well as wounding the dog. Conan arrived in Washington from the Middle East and received a Medal of Honor from the President. Now that is a good boy. That's all for What's Trending today. If you've seen a story you want to share, link it in the comment section below. Back to you, Dylan.
Thanks, Rachel. And finally, are you a GrabFood delivery rider or Grab driver? You may potentially qualify for an advance of $8,900. Select GrabFood delivery riders and private hire drivers have been offered the chance to tap Grab's upfront cash program. Under the scheme, selected workers instantly get hold of part of their projected earnings. Screenshots circulated by workers indicate that the advance could be as high as $8,900, with admin fees up to 8%. With us in the studio now is Straits Times journalist To Ting Wei. Hey, Ting Wei.
Hi.
Now, Ting Wei, you said in your article that this is uncommon in Singapore, and I think that some may immediately foresee some issues with this, like repayment as well as running away with the money. Is this likely to happen?
So I think in terms of repayment, there's not going to be that big an issue because for Grab, they are the ones issuing these cash advances. So what they have, they do have data of the food delivery riders and the drivers in terms of how much they earn per week, how much they earn per month, and then how long they have been driving for or riding for Grab. So in terms of all this data, they can at least tell whether this rider is capable of earning the money to pay back the loan. Sorry, not the loan, the cash advance. And over time, I think they will only offer to people who they have more kind of
trust.
more trust in, maybe to them kind of a higher credit rating.
Right.
So in terms of the issue, I guess it's not so much of the repayment, but what it means for the riders and also the drivers. Because when you look at it, it's there's a good part to it. It gives them immediate access to cash, but there's also a bad part in the sense that once they take out the loan, they can pay over 26 weeks, but it means that over these 26 weeks, they kind of have to keep working for Grab instead of switching to other platforms. They don't have that.
Yeah, I think in that sense, they are kind of contracted to kind of repay,
Yeah, correct. So in a way, I mean, there are concerns that it's a way to tie the workers down to them. And also because, when you give people immediate access to cash, it's maybe there's a temptation where they can take the cash and spend it on something that they don't necessarily need at the moment, which puts them in that they otherwise might not have incurred. So there's a concern there.
Now, Ting Wei, with that being said, what's your personal take on this scheme? Do you think, why now? Do you think Grab aims to kind of soften the e-scooter ban blow for its riders?
So in terms of, I think it's unrelated to the e-scooter ban because I think it has at least been going on for about 2 to 3 months at least. So, but why now? I think because I know, I think most of us know that Grab has been cutting down on incentives, all this, because they are looking for a more sustainable way of operations. So in terms of how they keep their drivers, their riders, and also passengers coming to them is to give them other value-added services. So this is a way to help them position themselves as a sort of a better platform compared to their rivals, because their rivals haven't offered a similar advance scheme.
I see.
So for those who want to, because for some riders and drivers, maybe they work from hand to mouth or something like that, so they don't have extra cash. So when you have that option of getting that immediate access to cash to resolve any financial issues or to get something that you really want at that point in time, it's quite a big benefit. But I think beyond the good side, we also have to look at the longer term picture, because looking at it, while what Grab says is they position it as a good thing, and it could really be a good thing, but if this is unregulated, because now it's not considered a loan, so if they don't need a license for it, but if it's unregulated, you are looking at maybe other companies trying to take advantage of this kind of arrangement and selling it not as a loan, and they might be able to do some like exploitative policies for their workers to tie them down long term. So yeah, there's good parts, but I think it needs to be looked at to see what things can be done to better protect workers receiving such a cash advance.
Right, right. Now, thanks Ting Wei for coming on to share with us more about this. And those were the top stories for the day. And for more news and videos, do head on to our website at straitstimes.com. And once again, I'm Dylan. See you tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.